Well, good morning, magandang umaga, and welcome to today's episode of My PI Dream. Today is build day 6. It's build day 6 on the Pavilion construction schedule here in the backyard of Villa Feliz. But I'm not in the backyard. I am actually next to the garage, down in the driveway that goes into the garage. Because today what we are going to be talking about is doing some woodwork. And when I talk about doing some woodwork, we're going to do some planing and some joining. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's the difference between a joiner and a planer and why that's important to know what the difference is. Let's go ahead and get today's episode started. So without further delay, let's get today's video underway. Now before we get started today, I just want to talk a little bit about the wood that you're probably going to get if you buy wood inside the Philippines. You're probably going to get something that's pretty rough or maybe even cut by a chainsaw, not something that has gone through a mill. Now if you go to a big box store like Wilcon or CW Home Depot or City Hardware or McKilling, one of the big box stores that they have here inside the Philippines, and you need things like 2x4s or 2x6s, now they'll have those. They'll be milled and they'll be ready for you to do construction. But that type of finished lumber comes at a cost because most of that wood is imported. Most of it you'll find is imported from Canada. Now if you're doing something with out of the ordinary dimensional wood, like what we're doing right here, something that's like, this is 4x6 by 3 foot, 4 inches by 6 inches by 3 foot. And if you're doing something like this, you're probably just going to have something that was cut somewhere with a chainsaw, and that's how it's going to be delivered. Now you're probably saying, James, well, this is pretty nice on this side right here. That doesn't look like a chainsaw. Well, it's not cut with a chainsaw. This has already gone through the planer several times on this side and on this side back here. But what you're going to get normally, and this is pretty good quality as a matter of fact, going through a chainsaw, it's going to be just like this. It's going to be very rough lumber. You see it's rough on that side and it's pretty rough on this side right here. Now what you're going to find is your wood is not going to be square, probably not even close like this. If you take a look at this wood right here, look at the angle. Look at the angle of this wood right here. That is really bad. So to be able to correct some of your wood so it's usable, so everything kind of lines up, you're going to need to do some adjustment. And the way you do adjustment is by a couple of really good tools that you can have in your tool arsenal if you work with wood. And that is a joiner over here and a planer over here. Now the joiner is good for making sure that your wood is square. It's lined up properly. So you see, we're probably going to take advantage of that for this piece of wood right here, because you could see how much of a diagonal this is. This was not cut very good at all. But if you need to make sure that the top and the bottom, all on both sides, on this side and the bottom, and it's perfectly flat on the top and the bottom where they line up, where one side isn't higher than the other, that's where your planer is going to come into play. Now normally what I do when I first start out, I will start out with the planer. And as you can see, this has already been planed once. We're going to do a little bit more planing in just a little bit. And what that does, that gives you, like I said earlier, it gives you the same height on both sides. This is all going to be cleaned up and nice and flat. And the thickness on this side and this side are going to be the same because the plate on the bottom doesn't move, and then you have a blade on the top that cuts and just basically cuts a thin layer off the top, and you just slide the piece of wood through. And it's very easy when I say sliding, because it has a roller mechanism inside that actually will push your lumber through the planer itself. So it's a very good thing. Once you get it cleaned up a little bit on the top and the bottom, then you have to work on these two sides right here. Now, for something like this right here, since this is a 6-inch side right here, and this is probably about 6.5, a little over 6.5 inch rough, I can't put it through this planer right now. First off, it's at an angle, and when it goes through, it will always be at an angle because it's always going to cut at whatever the bottom angle is. So we need to get the bottom to a 90-degree side to this side right here. And that's where the joiner comes into play. And one more thing before we go over to the joiner that I want to tell you about limitations that have to do with planers is most planers will only plane a maximum of a 6-inch height. When I talk about 6-inch height, we were just talking about this right here. So this height right here, and this piece of wood is 7 inches. So we need to cut off 1 inch. But the maximum height that you can adjust this planer over here is 6, and it's actually the maximum height on this specific Makita model right here is 6 3/16. Most models are just a little bit less than that. Most of them, the maximum height that you can go is 6 inches. And when you're trying to cut down from 7 inches down to 6 inches, that can be problematic with most of these type of planers right here. That is why we need the joiner to be able to go ahead and make this square and also take enough off so that we can get this finalized inside the planer, which is right about 6 inches maximum height that we have to go through. Now what the joiner is going to do, if you have a piece of wood that is, say, warped, or it has a bow in it, bowed this way or warped this way, what it will do when you put it through the planer right here, this is flat on this side, and this blade right here, as you go through the joiner, it will cut a thin level off, and if there's a bow inside there, it will pull off a bit of the warped area, and the flat side will stay to the flatness of the top here, and it will cut off the irregularity. Also, what you can do, you can take this, and when you go 90 degrees, you'll take your piece of wood up and you go against your guard over here on the side. Your guard will make sure that you're 90 degrees, and you will have a 90-degree angle from the bottom and to the side right here using this guard right here. Now for us, what we're going to have to do, we're going to take this piece of wood, and it has already been planed on the top and the bottom. We are going to put it inside the planer up here. We're going to line it up with the back of this guard, and you can see already when I lined up again, look at the gap that's inside here. That's how far off it is. So what it is going to do is going to start cutting a lot from this side first until we get this all level so that we have a perfect 90-degree angle. Now, the limitation, when you get one side in the joiner completed, you don't do the opposite side. And that's what the planer is for. Once you get one side correct, then you're going to bring this over to the planer, run it through the planer, because remember, the planer is going to make the top square to the bottom. You can't do that on here. If we were to flip it over and do the same thing on the top of here, we will never know, since we don't have a relationship from the top to the bottom because there's nothing up here. We would never get this perfectly square using the joiner. So it's only for one side. Now I'm going to do some adjustment to some of this wood that we're going to be using later on in the Pavilion project. And while I'm doing this, you can probably hear in the background, there's a lot of noise going on, and that's our contractors, people doing work on the steps that are going to get us up to the Pavilion. And we'll take a look at that later on as well. We'll go ahead and get some woodwork done, and then we'll continue in just a moment. Now we can see that just running it through the joiner a few passes, we now have a fairly accurate 90-degree angle from the bottom to this side, which was up against the guard on the side. So we can check that just by doing this right here, and we can see we're fairly close. We're pretty much there. And we can see we are very close to a perfect 90-degree angle. Now you can see the top. You see the top is still very much at a bad angle. So what we can do, since we can only go a maximum of 6 inches and 3/16 in this Makita model right here, if this is above, which I know it is, what we can do, we can actually cut a little bit off of this section right here and get it as close with relationship to this, and then we'll run it for a final cut through the planer. Now that we've gone through the joiner several times on both sides, and again, you would not normally do it for the second side, but this was so bad out and I needed to cut a section off to trim it down to get it into the planer. You can see that's a vast improvement. This is a vast improvement of the way it was to begin with. So we are just a little bit over 6 inches now, and the next thing we're going to do to make sure that this end and this end, the thicknesses, the 6-inch thickness is the same on both sides, because we know this is correct. This side to this side, this thickness right here, because it was run through the planer to begin with. But this has yet to be run through the planer from the top to the bottom on the 6-inch section right here. And that's what we're going to do now. I think I have just enough cut off so it will fit in that 6 and 3/16 maximum depth or thickness of material that can go through it. So let's go ahead and go over to the planer. And what I want to do is I just want to do a rough measurement on here. So this is exactly 6 inches by exactly 4 inches. Now, I'm really not worried so much about the length here because I ordered this to 3 foot, and this is actually 3 foot. 1, 2, 3, 3.5 inches bigger. This is 3.5 inches bigger than what I needed, and that's what I asked. I asked for everything to be over dimensional from the original specs. That way I have a chance to clean things up, and at the very end we will take all the wood and make sure all the wood matches up properly. All right, so now that we've gone through the planer, we can do a rough measurement, and the rough measurement says, well, it's exactly, we are exactly 6 inches on that end, exactly 6 inches on this end, and we know this is 4 inches from the original planing that we did when we did these two sides. So we are at exactly a 4 by 6, 4 inches by 6 inches. Now that's the rough cut. Normally, if you buy anything that's finished wood from any type of a hardware store that is ready to be constructed, you're going to lose about a 1/2 inch. So something like a 2 by 4 is actually 1.5 inch by 3.5 inches. And in the case of this right here that we have a 4 by 6, it's about 3.5 by, what did I say, 5.5 inches. So that would be your final. So we still have room to do some finishing. And the reason we want to wait, we want to get everything cut in case we have to make any type of corrections. In the very final stage, we'll take all the wood and we'll make it match up. And the reason that's really important, because when you're setting posts on top of each other and you're putting brackets, you want to make sure that all these widths are exactly the same size on here. So all the plates, the brackets that go on here, they're nice and smooth for your finish. Now this is probably going to take me a few days to do, so I'm not going to put you through the boredom and watch me go through all of working on this wood here. I'm going to get that done and try to get it out of the way as much as possible. Also, at the same time that I'm doing this, the guys are still working on the slab area, the steps, and the slab is done, so really there's not much. Once they get the steps done inside there, we need to start installing the woodwork. I didn't get very much done, but I did make a big mess out here, and it's raining. You probably hear the thunder in the background, and I'm covered in sawdust. But I got to stop here, and I'll just show you a few of the pieces that I got done. So I'll just continue this tomorrow, but I just wanted to show you some of the pieces that I got completed today, and that really is the some of the web racing, all the web racing, and one of the king posts. So really not a lot, but I did get started very late today. I really didn't get started until about lunchtime. I had some other pressing matters here at Villa Feliz this morning that I had to take care of. Let me show you several of the web racing and one of the king posts that was completed today. All right, well, you can see here the 4 that are marked F, those are the web racing, and this is one of the king posts, because the king post is the one that goes in the center, in between the diagonals for the web races. So you can see, and it looks pretty good. And it's real close. It's still not done, but it's very close to being finished. I just have to do some small amount of planing at the very end to ensure that these fit on top of the tie beam that goes on the top. It has to be the same width. And I have another one over here. This is also another one of the king posts that have to be done. I wasn't able to get that because you can see it's raining outside. Well, I got to tell you one thing. I'm really glad we built the basement garage here. Whether it's a basement garage or a garage above ground, it doesn't matter. If you're a DIY kind of person and you like a lot of hands-on, it is great having this space right here to be able to do a lot of your work, whether it be working on your car or truck, or doing some carpenter work, maybe building a bookshelf, bookcase, something like that, or electronics, like we can do electronics in the back, and also gardening. We have a space on over there for gardening. So if you're thinking about building in the Philippines, you think about designing your house, make sure you include like a really big garage space, workshop area if you are a DIY kind, and you probably are if you're here on our channel. Well, it's about 4:30, so I think I'm going to call it a day. I don't believe that the thunder, the lightning, and the rain are going to let up in the next 30 minutes, and I usually like to call it the end of the day around 5 o'clock anyway. So it was a good, successful day today, even though I got started late, and it actually takes quite a while when you're doing something like this, when you're doing milling, to do it right and make sure that all the lines come out nice and straight and you get a good finish. It takes a while, so take your time when you're working on wood. I know those of you who work with wood, I don't have to tell you that because it's a passion, like it is a passion for me working with woodworking. And this is actually mahogany. And I love mahogany. I love the grain of mahogany. I like the color. I love the color of the mahogany, and it finishes very, very nice when you seal it and you stain it. We're going to do a light stain on this, and the stain that we're going to use is also a stain that has like a sealant it's sort of like a waterproofing sealant that goes on the outside, so when it rains, the rain won't have any problem penetrating inside the wood here. Well, that's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up. Please share, and if you have not subscribed, just click on that little My PI Dream heart in the bottom right hand side of your screen. You'll be subscribed and notified if you ring that bell next time I upload a new video. So until such time from right here in the Philippines, you have a wonderful and blessed day. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to see more just like these, just click on one of the helpful links over to your right and you might be able to pick up on some good information on DIY projects, how to, or if you are interested in moving to the Philippines and building, you'll find answers there as well.